Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Another exciting episode for you today. We're going to be covering recent news from Bitfarms, Bitdeer, TeraWulf, and of course CORZ with the big no vote in relation to the CRWV deal coming through today. A lot to talk about. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comments section below which of these miners you're currently holding and your top pick in the sector. With that being said, let's get into today's episode. Okie doke, guys, away we go. Thursday afternoon here. This is going to be a good podcast. We've got some big news, some big stories that just broke today, including the decision on the CORZ vote. I'm sure not a big surprise to many. We'll get to that in a second. Before we do, Bitcoin continuing to show some weakness here. We're now down, hovering in the $107,000 range. What's your take on this, Anthony?
Well, I don't have a specific take, but it's obviously like 4% down over the last 5 days. We were hoping it would stay in that range when it was at 114, 116, but it just seems to have, like you say, weakened a little bit there. That all the news out there with the markets, I think the S&P's had all-time highs this week, and some of the other indices are as well. Gold's pulled back a bit lately, so that reached an all-time high in very short space of time, and it started to pull back a little bit. Maybe there's some indecisiveness with investors, maybe some profit taking. Bear in mind, we are over $107,000, and literally just over 18 months ago, this Bitcoin was in the $15,000-$16,000 range. So, you know, great profits in the last 2 years, even greater profits if you had Bitcoin longer than that. So no distinct news that would have made this move today, but yeah, it's moving down, and we're getting closer to the end of the week. So you know, we'll be hoping for an Asian rise over the weekend, maybe like last weekend. But it doesn't deter me from keeping my eye on Bitcoin and maybe buying some more in the near future.
Yeah, we're playing the long game here, and any dip like this could be an opportunity if you have the same mindset. Keep in mind, we just got the rate cut news this week. That's generally bullish for markets. We've got a lot of the hyperscaler earnings out this week as well, and one theme that they all had in common, they were continuing to invest billions and billions of dollars, increasing their CapEx spends for HPC AI infrastructure, and we're going to be talking about that in a little bit here on the podcast. Next up, we've got the famous heat map. We're going to be talking about a few of your charts and tables in today's podcast. This is a fan favorite. Why don't you walk us through a few of the trends you're seeing today?
Yeah, and again, with the Bitcoin price down there, we've seen a bit more correlation with some of the mining stocks down, the majority in the red there, but we are seeing some green shoots today. TeraWulf up 5%. We'll come on and talk a bit more about TeraWulf in a second. They've got some news out today. CORZ up 2%. We'll cover CORZ as well. So we have some news stories behind those that are up there. But Cipher up 2%. And there's been some interesting social media tweets there about Cipher. And Bitdeer at level playing field today. They're managing to keep the head just above water. You know, with no increase there, but the remainders of the miners there are showing red at the moment. But we're talking about a 1 day. If you look at the 5 day, the majority on the 5 day is still in positive territory. And if you look at the month change, only DMG is currently down on the month change and by 6%. But majority of miners probably in the 30-40% up over the last month. So showing really good. And if you go back even further, some really big rises for the likes of IREN and Cipher, which we've covered on previous podcasts. But today, just having an off day, as I say, tend to zoom out a little bit. Don't try to follow every 5 minutes. These stocks are volatile. Bitcoin is very volatile as well. And so I tend to look at the longer term view, and it's been good to me over the last few years.
Yeah, just great. Now, moving on to the next portion of housekeeping here, more earnings. We're in the midst of earnings season. So far, we've got Riot booked in on the 31st. So tomorrow, a Halloween special for you. We're going to be having our friend Patrick Fleury back on the 4th to talk about this recent Fluid Stack Google deal. or the second iteration of that deal. Mara on the 5th for Q3 earnings, and Dan Roberts himself from IREN still working through the dates there. Now, just as we're recording this podcast, we also locked in Soluna and Bitdeer. So Bitfarms has now come out with their earnings date. What are you most excited about hearing from Ben and teams in this round of earnings?
Yeah, just hoping to hear more and more about the opportunities that are coming their way from Panther Creek and the fact they have the funding in place now to deliver part of that strategy going forward, as well as the fact that obviously it's earnings. So we'll be interested to see the impacts of what's been happening over the last sort of 3 to 4 months. And hopefully we'll be able to get Ben's view on a number of topics. But as we know from previously, Ben is one of the most listened to miners out there. Our podcast numbers for his and also for Dan from IREN are sort of like running away with at the moment in terms of the listeners, and we expect another great podcast from Ben in a week's time.
Yeah, we certainly do. That's what I was going to say. I'm most excited just to see Ben and hear him talk about his vision for the company. Now, Bitdeer, the other one we just actually booked in, Jeff LaBerge, they're coming out as well on the 10th of November. So going to be a very busy next few weeks. We've got the travel, obviously, in Texas, going to be going over to the Bitdeer site. Again, same question. What do you have your eyes on out from the team at Bitdeer?
Well, Bitdeer is when you talk about Bitdeer, you've got to talk about the fact they're fully integrated, and the fact they're building their own machines. I mean, we've talked a lot about the Seal Miner A1, A2. Well, they're launching now the Seal Miner A3. It's in production now, and that'll be going out to customers in the very, very near future. And the numbers that are coming out are sort of like groundbreaking at the moment. It looks like it could be the most efficient mining machine on the market. And it will certainly get the attention of the likes of Bitbane and MicroBT. But Bitdeer's here to stay. And the great thing about it is, if they don't sell the machines, they put them into their own sites, and they've got one of the largest amounts of power available from all the miners. 3 gigawatts of power in development at the moment. This isn't pipeline. This is in development. So they've got a significant amount of sites they could put machines into. And when you think you're building these machines at literally half the price that other miners are having to pay, the payback period becomes that much quicker, 8 to 9 months. And therefore, plenty of opportunity to get some good profits before the next halving.
You're certainly right there, and a lot of people really picking up on that vertically integrated strategy for Bitdeer. So that'll be a good discussion. Now, on to today's current events. An interesting topic or theme today. What is the value of these megawatts? How do we compare the megawatts or the valuation being ascribed to these companies? You talk about Bitdeer having that large pipeline that's actually in active development. So that'll be a recurring theme here. TeraWulf, they're on the path of upgrading the value of their megawatts. They just came out with that massive fluid stack Google deal. They followed that up with the joint venture in Abernathy, Texas. We looked at that site yesterday. Today, they're continuing on the financing trend here, upsizing from 500 million on the proposed convertible yesterday, now to 900.
900 million, that's a significant increase. And also they've granted initial purchasers of the convertible note an option to purchase an additional 125 million aggregate principal amount, which will take them after costs to around about 1 billion of capital coming into the company to help deliver that additional contract with Fluid Stack, as you quite rightly mentioned there. But one thing we said about TeraWulf over the last few weeks there, Patrick, as CFO, has made sure that when all these contracts have been signed, his role then is to make sure the funding is in place to deliver these contracts. And we sat down with him in New York literally 5 weeks ago, and he told us exactly what the plan was, and this is them delivering that plan now.
It certainly is. Yeah, you see a 37.5% premium given on the conversion price here out till 2032, 0% convertible note. So just great. You talk about Google being in the conversation, opening those financing doors. This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and the other thing to point out is you've got to start looking at all these contracts in place now. So the contract with Fluid Stack, this particular contract is a joint venture um, going to be completed in Abernathy in Texas, and the current contract takes them to just over 500 megawatts. So nearly 510 megawatts. When you add on the 420 megawatts from the Core 42 and the previous fluid stack deals, that was at 420. This is a joint venture, so half the 168, that's 84 megawatts for those who want to calculate that there. That'll go on top of the 420. That takes them well over the 500. And there's a potential for a further expansion of another 168. If that one comes to light, which the expectation now is, why mention it if it's not going to come to light? That extra 84 takes them into the same sort of level of what we've seen Core Scientific with CoreWeave. So that one was really like the biggest contract. TeraWulf now are joining the same level as Core Scientific, and who's going to bet on them getting another contract in the near future? But a sheer amount of growth and great work from the team to deliver this in a very short space of time.
Look at that segue right into Core Scientific, almost like we planned the podcast out here, Anthony. Why don't we talk about Core Scientific? Today's the day we found out the results of the vote. I'll let you break the big news here. Really no surprise to the retail investment community, but more importantly, I think, is the go forward strategy here. Now, we talked about the analogy. The team has been kind of sitting on the sidelines watching this industry evolve while they've been tied into this deal. It appears they've come out with the gloves off, ready to make some major moves, as we'll talk about next up.
Yeah, we've spoke about this deal probably for the last 2 months on the podcast, ever since we started showing the table to compare the deal that was announced on the 7th of July. That's the day that CoreWeave went to Core Scientific with that initial deal to buy the company, which was valued at $9 billion. And I think, heads were nodding at that point in time there. But as we saw the deal linked to that share price with CoreWeave, it started to drop. And at one point, it was nearly half the value. Well, today we had the answer from the retail shareholders. The board of directors did vote that deal through back on the 7th of July, and we may be able to get some insight as to why that was agreed at that point in time there. But to be honest with you, the rest of the shareholders and some of the institutions and some of the activist shareholders who've got significant holdings of Core Scientific, they decided to vote no, and it was an overwhelming vote in no there, and also it highlights that retail shareholders now have so much knowledge and information about these potential deals, about these potential valuations, because there are more companies in the space that are doing similar deals. I mean, we look at the growth of Cipher mining, we look at the growth of TeraWulf we've mentioned there, we look at the growth of IREN in terms of all their market capitalization, and then we look at Core Scientific, who had the biggest deal on the table, a 590 megawatt deal, and the best deal on the table as well, in terms of the fact that they were the only company that managed to get a significant interest-free loan from CoreWeave to cover $750 million that initial refurbishment costs. Of course, it gets paid back, but it gets paid back interest-free over the first couple of years. So it was a phenomenal deal. But they weren't getting the recognition from the market. As every other company started to increase valuation, Core Scientific got left behind. And the reason he got left behind is because the deal had been announced and the directors approved it, and everyone thought that's going to go through. Shareholders thought differently, and the shareholders voted today. Now, the interesting thing now is what happens next for Core Scientific, Bryce?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this slide, I guess we got a bit of a preview after the deal was announced. CoreWeave put out a deck. It talked about the power pipeline at Core Scientific. Now, interestingly enough, promptly following the decision this morning, Core Scientific put out a deck really confirming what a lot of retail suspicion had, saying, hey, we're operating now in 9 states. We've got a tremendous power pipeline here, and there's a lot more to our story than just this deal with CoreWeave.
Yeah, absolutely. And this power that's being held now by CoreWeave in terms of existing power, and then also this pipeline of power is starting to really stack up. Now, the map there shows all the current sites there, the 1.4 gigawatts of existing power capacity. That's enabled them to fulfill that CoreWeave deal there. And you can see that CoreWeave are actually going to be located on 5 of those sites. but there is significantly more power, and there is significantly more power in the pipeline to come along as well. I mean, you're talking about potentially 2.3 gigawatts of future growth power, which when you turn that into compute power, that becomes 1.5 gigawatts of compute power. Remember, they've got 590 megawatts of compute power at the moment. That's nearly another gigawatt on top of that. And this is the day that the no vote came through. So this is really, really good information. And they also talk about the potential of a further gigawatt of power, taking their total gross power to 3.3 gigawatts. So now we're seeing that the company have not just got the 1.4 gigawatts of power, they've now got 2.3 gigawatts of gross power, and that computes into 1.5 gigawatts of compute power, which they obviously can use for deals going forward. If you look at the existing deal with CoreWeave, that's only 590 megawatts. So in simple terms, they've got the best part of nearly another gigawatt of power available in the pipeline for compute. So that could be a deal, twice the size of the current deal. On top of that, they're announcing that there's a potential further gigawatt of gross power in a pipeline there, which would then take that 1.5 gigawatt of compute power all the way up to 2.2 gigawatts of compute power, which is effectively 4 times what they're currently contracted for at the moment. Remember, that contracted deal at the moment brings in $850 million per annum at a net operating income of about 80% once the contract's fully up in place and the 750 million has been paid back. That's significant there. If they were able to quadruple that in terms of the size, you can start to understand now how $7.5 billion was probably too low for this takeover, and the shareholders have read into that very, very quickly, and they voted that way as well.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, we talk about the theme of this video being valuation of megawatts. Essentially, CoreWeave valued Core Scientific's megawatts at $9 billion the day they struck that deal, and retail said, hey, that's not good enough. So we can see the value, the theme, the demand, the scarcity of these megawatts. It's real here, you guys. We're seeing it in front of our eyes as a $9 billion deal was just turned down. Now, the other X factor we wanted to talk about, yesterday we mentioned CleanSpark now breaking into Texas, getting involved in the AI space, targeting 2027 to energize these sites. Core Scientific, on the other side of things, they've got first mover advantage. They were working with CoreWeave for years prior to this announcement or this deal. And as we start to look at the conversion of these sites, not only do they have a deal in place, but they have physical buildings you can go up to, you can touch. These are looking extremely impressive in terms of data center construction.
Absolutely. And we know firsthand about the Denton site there. We were there in June last year for that early announcement of the 200 megawatt deal with CoreWeave. And that site at the time had 3 50 megawatt warehouses for Bitcoin mining and a repair center. You can look at the picture now on the right-hand side at the top there, the Denton facility now, and it's totally changed around there. It looks really something a lot more different, looks more like a proper data center, and the sheer size of it. This is now a 260 megawatt site, so this is going to be one of the largest data center sites in the US. I've been to the largest one in Europe, and that's 150 megawatts. This is 260 megawatts here. This is one of the 4 sites that Core Scientific are using for that CoreWeave contract. But look at the construction there from the picture. This is, a lot more involved than just putting up some prefab coverings for a Bitcoin mining site. There's a lot more involved, a lot more cost there, and this is something that you'll see throughout now as they grow compute power as we start seeing more and more deals signed.
Yeah, and when you look at those renditions or drawings, they look just like the Panther Creek data center. These are the opposite of modular design. These are high-end Tier 3 facilities. Now, most exciting for me, the last slide of the deck today from Core Scientific, basically saying, okay, now what? We've been in a quiet period. You haven't heard from us for a while. What can we expect as investors in this company by Q4 earnings? So just around the quarter here. Now, you look down this list, at least one new colocation client, one or more new power contracts, new major contract in a top US market. These are significant commitments and promises. It appears the team has been quite busy despite the quiet period, really lining up some future prospects.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to know, Bryce, if the conversations that they were having post the agreement with CoreWeave were highlighting that there was potential for their sites to take on new co-location customers. And actually, now that the no votes in place and they've got their own, basically their own reins to their chariot to go forward, they can come out, really fighting to deliver what shareholders expect them to do and deliver some great returns on investment there through the HPC, using all their available megawatts to deliver high performance compute AI. And, I expect, in the same way we've just talked about TeraWulf, I expect more and more deals, because the difference with Core Scientific and the likes of, saying CleanSpark or some of the other peer miners is they're already delivering it. So when a client wants to have a discussion with Core Scientific, just take them to the Denton facility or the Austin facility, and they're all delivering HPC at both those locations. And so therefore, you're not chancing yourself with someone that's got no experience. You've got somebody who's really providing that service. And as we go through quarter by quarter, that deal starts ramping up with CoreWeave. So at the moment, it's in the low tens of megawatts, but by then of 2027, it's 590 megawatts, and that's the sort of time frame when many of the other miners are just going to literally opening their doors and switching their power onto potential clients coming through. Core Scientific will have established a number of contracts before then, and will be delivering most of them.
Yeah, just phenomenal. So great, great overview from the team at Core Scientific. Glad to see some direction from the company. Again, looking forward to hosting someone from the C-suite to get an update firsthand for you guys as well. Now, this really got us thinking again, what is the value of these megawatts? How do we compare apples to apples? These power pipelines, what does this all mean in terms of data? Now, we came across an interesting tweet by DNV999. This is a similar table to what JP Morgan just put out, talking about the valuation of these various different miner HPC hybrids based on their megawatts. Now, you've taken this a step further. We obviously keep quite a bit of data on the back end to support the website. We'll talk about that in a second. You were able to pull a very similar table, including all of the companies that we follow. So we'll flip that up next here. Maybe you can walk us through what it is we're even looking at and some of the highlights, in your opinion.
Yeah, so this is obviously showing the miners that we covered there. It's showing the price, their market capitalization, it's showing what their Bitcoin hodl is, the value of that hodl. So all the basic stuff that we talk about on a regular day-to-day basis. I've also included on here some of the information from their balance sheets. So their cash position, their debt position. And when you have the market capitalization and you have the cash position and the debt position, you can calculate something called the enterprise value. And bear in mind, a lot of people like to use the enterprise value as an alternative valuation method to the market capitalization, because it takes account of debt and a case of cash holdings. And so if you want to calculate enterprise value, you take the market capitalization, you add to that any debt that's on the balance sheet, and then you can take away any cash holdings or any Bitcoin holdings that can be credit converted into cash. And so for this exercise, we've taken the whole of the Bitcoin holdings as effectively cash or cash equivalents to calculate that EV. By using the EV, then you can then sort of like start determining a lot of other metrics, value by. And the one we're going to focus on today really is the value by megawatts. And we've seen some of these companies now, these data center companies, really grow their megawatts in sort of like the last 12 months, as they move away from sort of the Bitcoin mining strategy to now fully focus on delivering HPC, because every megawatt you put towards HPC is going to give you a better return on investment. We heard that first from Sam Tabar from Bit Digital probably 18 months ago, when they were signing up customers in Iceland, and they were the first miner to land a really big contract. It was a 50 million annualized contract for HPC. And I always remember him saying, the money that they're getting from HPC really is significantly better return on investment than they get from their mining. And he said at the time, this is going back a long time ago, Bitcoin price would have to get to 135,000, which at that time was nearly double the price before he'd start actually focusing his vision back towards mining. And we've never got to that level since. So, as we've seen from that date there, every miner, one by one, has started to put their megawatts towards HPC. Now, the value by megawatts there is literally taking the total megawatts and the total enterprise value, and then dividing the enterprise value by the megawatts there to come up with a value by megawatt there. So you can see very quickly there, if I was to look at TeraWulf, which has at the moment 880 megawatts, but you look at the size of their enterprise value, that gives you a value of $7.47 million per megawatt. But then you look at some of the other miners there, and you've got the likes of, say, Bitfarms, who have a value of 1.37 million per megawatt. IREN 5.7. IREN's got a very high market capitalization and also a very high enterprise value there. So there's an expectation that obviously they're going to deliver a significant service there. Their current valuation per megawatt, 5.7 million. But I would look at that table there, and the average is probably in the sort of like 2 to 3 million range there for most of the miners. When you look at Soluna, that one's an eye-opener there because they have at the moment over a gigawatt of energy in either using or development stage, and they have a further 1.8 gigawatts in what we call a pipeline. So of that 1 gigawatt there, you're talking about a company that has an enterprise value of only 157 million. That gives them a value by megawatt of $150,000 per megawatt. And again, please do not go out there and start using one metric. Anthony's metric there on megawatts valuation there is why I should be looking at to buy. This is one metric. When you're doing your due diligence, you need to look at maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 different metrics there to even start thinking about how you're going to invest or not invest in a company there. Because I can look at all the metrics and I can pull out each individual metric and make every miner look really, really good. But you can't do that when you've got 7, 8, 9 metrics, because you'll start to see that some companies start coming through with consistently good valuations in every metric. So in this metric here, the likes of Soluna, the likes of DMG as well, the likes of Hive Digital, some of these small companies there have got really good values per megawatt. Bitfarms and Bit Digital have, even Bitdeer. So Bitdeer with a valuation of an enterprise value of 4.6 million, they're coming out at 1.56 million per megawatt, and they have, as I said before, the best part of 3 gigawatts of power in play or being developed, not pipeline. That's probably, in fact, looking at the table there, that is the largest power pipeline at the moment in development stages at the moment. So keep a watchful eye on that there. But again, one metric is not sufficient to make any decisions on purchasing shares. And we're not here to do that. We just help you to start your due diligence, and we cover quite a few different metrics, take account of those, and that might help you start where you need to be.
Yeah, good disclaimer there. And again, this is a point in time or a snapshot in time. I personally love this table. I like the idea of us getting away from exahash. Obviously, this industry's evolved. Maybe we update the name just to power analysis. But the idea is these companies are trying to maximize the value of each megawatt, and really, as the world changes and trends change, the use cases for these megawatts are going to change. This kind of a table really allows an apple-to-apple comparison for whatever these guys are doing with their power, whether that be hosting, self-mining, HPC, AI. Let us know in the comment section below if you'd like to see more of this type of stuff on the website or in the podcast. You talk about the importance of looking at other metrics. If we go over to our website, you guys, we've got a plethora of data. A lot of this stuff is live, linked to the market. We've got miner metrics, so you can go in there if you're more focused on the Bitcoin mining side of things. For all the companies that are still reporting monthly production, we're going to have that in real time as it comes available. We've got miner valuation on there, so comparing, contrasting, again, looking at some of these different metrics. And we've got some articles that are actually self-published to the website. So some unique data you're not able to get anywhere else. Not to mention the Miner Madness competition, the newsletter. There's a lot there. Check it out. It's 100% free to do. Now, we wanted to talk about hash price and hash rate index, but another key theme we've talked about in today's presentation, energy. We know Luxor Technology was on last month. Nick Hansen, the CEO, talking about the launch of energy on the Luxor platform. This seems to be a trend that no one can escape in the industry.
No, absolutely not. And their product, which was announced via the podcast and obviously via the conference there, this gives miners this tool now to help them manage costs, optimize energy strategies, align power costs and mine performance. It gives them more than just switching on and switching off. It basically, effectively, is like it's like artificial intelligence helping them to run their businesses. And I'm sure that many are either using this or using something very similar at the moment. But it's a great product out there, and it was great to welcome Nick onto the podcast. Finally, the CEO of Luxor to explain in more detail.
It certainly was, yeah. So one to watch there. If you're involved in any way in the mining industry, I'm sure Luxor has something that could probably make your life a little bit easier. They have quite the tech stack there. Now, we've gone through a lot today, you guys. We have earnings coming up. If you have any questions for these companies, thoughts on today's news, the core deal, the data we've shown, we'd love to hear them in the comments section below. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you back here tomorrow.